Have you ever stopped to think about just how weird the English language can be? Especially when it comes to plurals? We use them constantly, but hiding inside these simple words are some of the strangest quirks and historical twists you can imagine.
Okay, let's just dive right in with a question that honestly sounds more like a dad joke, right? If one is a goose and many are geese, then why isn't one moose and many meese? It feels like it should be. But this little riddle, this funny inconsistency is actually the perfect clue to unlocking the whole mystery of why English plurals are so wonderfully strange. Really, when you boil it all down, it's a story of two different approaches. You've got the regular way, it's easy, it's predictable, you just slap an S on the end. Book becomes books. Simple. But then you have the rebel way, the words like mouse that just decide to go completely off script. And what we're going to do is figure out why these rebels even exist in the first place.
So let's start with the foundation. In Section 1, we're looking at the simple rule. And of course, it's rebels. You have to know what's normal before you can really appreciate just how weird the weird ones are.
The standard rule is the one we all had drilled into our heads in elementary school. For almost every noun in English, you just add an S or an ES. One car, two cars. One box, two boxes. It's clean, it's efficient, and most of the time it works perfectly.
But then you meet the rebels. These are the words that see that nice, simple rule and just say, nah, not for me. They're the ones that give the language its character. And trust me, every single one of them has a backstory.
So, where did these rebels come from? Well, for our first group, we have to become linguistic archaeologists. Let's head to Section 2 and listen for the echoes from Old English, what I like to call the ghosts of grammar past.
Now here's a key piece of the puzzle. It's a concept called I mutation. I know, it sounds super technical like a science experiment, but the idea is actually pretty simple. Way back in Old English, a sound at the end of a word could actually reach back into the middle of the word and change the vowel sound. And you can see exactly how it worked right here. The Old English word for foot was foot. When they made it plural, that new ending caused the O sound to shift, becoming feet. Over centuries, the plural ending itself just vanished. But the vowel change, that stuck around, and that's how we got foot and feet. The exact same thing happened to get tooth and teeth and man and men.
So here's the big takeaway. Words like geese and feet are not mistakes. The language isn't broken. They are, quite literally, historical fossils. They're preserving a grammar rule that's been dead for hundreds of years. How cool is that?
All right, let's meet a completely different kind of rebel. In Section 3, we're talking about the unchanging plurals. These are the words that are so rebellious, they don't even bother to change at all.
So, picture this. You're out in the country and you see one sheep. The singular is sheep. No big deal, right? Makes sense.
But then you look across the whole field and you see dozens of them, a whole flock. And what do you call them? You call them sheep. The word is exactly the same. What is going on here?
This phenomenon is called a zero plural. And one of the most popular theories about why this happens is fascinating. It's believed that many of these words, like deer, fish, and sheep, were originally game animals. And from a hunter's point of view, they were seen more as a resource, a collective thing. So there wasn't a strong need to differentiate between one and many. You just had deer or fish.
And you see this pattern in a bunch of words: deer, fish, sheep. And what's really wild is that this old habit has even been applied to modern things, like aircraft. You wouldn't say 10 aircrafts, you'd just say 10 aircraft.
So far, the rebels we've met have deep roots in English history. But English has always been a language of immigrants. So for Section 4, let's look at the words that were borrowed from afar.
English has always loved borrowing words from other languages, and when it took words from Latin and Greek, it often just took their plural rules right along with them. It's why one cactus becomes two cacti. That's just how you do it in Latin. But what's really fascinating is watching us over time slowly bend these words to our will. You know, the proper Latin plural of stadium is stadia, but when was the last time you heard anyone say that? We all say stadiums now. The language is slowly making these immigrant words feel more at home.
So we've dug into ancient history, we've looked at words from other countries, but this story isn't finished. And that brings us to our final and maybe most important section. This is a living language. The rules are still being written as we speak.
And that brings us to a perfect modern-day battlefield for plurals. What do you call more than one octopus? Seriously, if you ask 3 different people, you might get 3 different, very passionate answers.
And here's the thing, there isn't really a single right answer. Octopuses is the straightforward English way. It just takes the word and applies our standard ES rule.
But octopodes? Well, that honors the word's original Greek roots. We are literally watching the language evolve in real time, and we're the ones deciding which path it's going to take. So if you take one thing away from all this, let it be this. English isn't broken. It's not a mess. It is a living museum. And it is absolutely full of stories. Stories about ancient grammar, about hunting, about borrowing words from scholars. Every weird plural you run into is like a little doorway into that history. And that leaves us with one last thought. As the language keeps changing, what stories are we going to add to it next?